leadership behaviors are perceived by others because it's really numeric, and they can compare their score with the other's score. But the interesting part is how they react when they discovered this discrepancy. One leader got angry. To be honest, I got scared when I was interviewing him. He stated that kind of bothers me because it's like, why can't people just have those conversations? You know, it's kind of abrasive way to find out someone is not happy with you. In fact, she said more than that, but I cannot quote it. And happily, in fact, 61% appreciated this discrepancy, whether it's negative or positive. And one of the leaders said, I cringed a little bit, thinking about what people are saying. But nobody used this opportunity to take a pot shot or rate me really low. I think people get an honest appraisal, and I really appreciate that. Well, it's a little hard. It's a little bit hard to see it in paper. And 4 people, or 4 leaders, in fact, developed some level of confusion. Why is that? What does that mean? And 2 of them showed told me that they are going to explore more to seek an answer for this type of confusion, and the other 2, they did not show any sign. In terms of how the LPI helped leaders to recognize the behaviors that need improvement, 90% said yes, and only 1 leader said no. When I asked her why, she said because I received overwhelmingly positive feedback. But here's the interesting part, in fact. She still recognized what she needs to improve by just reading through the LPI questions. And she stated that I was reading through the questions in this self-assessment and said, oh yeah, this is something I should do more. The big surprising is that my colleagues thought that I was doing fine in those. In terms of how the LPI helped leaders to recognize what their followers need from them, only 42% said yes, while 50% said only a little bit, and 1 or 8% said no. I asked this big proportion, I asked them why. They said, because you provide us with only numeric feedback. If there is any comments, any open-ended question, that will help us recognize what they need. The numeric feedback didn't tell all of the story, in fact, or most of the story. I will talk about this in the integration, and this is one of my effects, one of the worst effects of my facilitation process on their experience. Lastly, how the LPI helped leaders to discover behaviors that they were not aware of. 50% said yes. And in fact, the 42%, they just said no without adding any comment. They just said no without adding any extra information. So one of the leaders within the 50% stated that I'm not like how she's surprised, in fact, when she discovered something that she was not aware of. She said, I am surprised where that comes from. That the LPI suggested her that she is a controlling person. And then she said, I'm not sure where that comes from. That's just I'm controlling? I need to learn more about those scores. Okay, now here's the integration, which I explained in the mixed method frame. Integration between question 1 and the question 2, the Kano survey and the interview results. The first integration is to discover the effect of the facilitation process on the leader's experiences with the LPI result. Okay. Now, that's a really good one. I found one positive effect comes off from the facilitation process, which is the confidentiality. By increasing the confidentiality, by adding or by allowing leaders to generate their reports, that makes them feel safe. And one leader, or two leaders in fact, one of them said, make sure that information is confidential because, I don't share any personal files with anybody. You have to make sure that this information is generic and in nature and cannot be used by a third party. Another leader shared that I think people in management position don't want something to come back and haunt them. This is the split cells based on the leader's material review status. Who did not review didn't show any negative or positive. But the leaders, in fact, who reviewed the material, I found in the interviews, they trusted the feedback more. They showed me they trusted the feedback more. And a leader stated that, knowing also that this LPI 360 has been a long established, and that they collected the data and used that for some comparative stuff, that was also assuring. Similarly, a leader stated that, again, this idea of why you can trust it, means the LPI report, just reminds you that it's not some fly-by-night. The fourth feature was the self-selection feature, where leaders select their own observers. And this is the effect. I found two positive effects and one negative effect. Including this feature, in fact, enabled leaders to invite external groups like from their previous departments they led. For example, I have one leader who had only 3 months in his new position, so he had the opportunity to invite other leaders, other observers from outside. This is one of the positive effects, in fact, of allowing you to select. The other effect was that leaders had the opportunity to meet with their observers to learn more beyond the numeric feedback. And one of the leaders, and one negative effect. The negative effect was a leader received an overwhelmingly positive feedback. And she stated that, I don't know if they were just quickly really not putting much effort into that or just wanted to be nice. This is one of the negative effects that associated with the inclusion of this feature in the facilitating process. Lastly, only negative effect I found associated with the numeric feature. I don't recommend facilitators to include just numeric. It caused confusion and misinterpretation to the result. One of the leaders stated that they were not talking about, about the confusion part. They were so inconsistent that that's all I learned. I went from 10 to 3. Another leader considered the lack of open-ended question, in fact, as a major limitation in the LPI report. And she stated the other major limitation of me really was the lack of feedback on other than numeric. So it would be really nice to have some ability to get comments and more in-depth kind of explanation of why people select this certain number. Some kind of misinterpreting the results. In fact, some of the leaders have maybe interpreted the high discrepancy as a kind of personal issue between him or her and some of her teams. One leader said, I wonder about this person who rated me that way. They perceive your interaction based on their perspective that can be perceived as a negative appraisal of me or a bias of my own. Third question, and the last question. How effective was the LPI 360 as a tool for encouraging leaders' self-development? That was answered by the follow-up emails. Based on the Brinkhoff's normal result of a training, Brinkhoff's suggested that 20% of trainees may use only a little bit of what they have learned, 60% within the medium usage, and 20% is expected to use a lot of skills that they learned during a workshop. So based on this theory, I would expect 2.6 leaders. Like 2 to 3 leaders will not use what they have learned. Almost 7 to 8 leaders will be within the median usage, and 2 to 3 will fall into the high usage category. This is what I expect. But what did I observe? Let's see. 7 leaders in high usage, in fact. That's really nice. And only 1 leader within the medium usage. And 5 leaders within the low usage. But this data was collected almost, like an average, 6 weeks after their interviews. And only, in fact, 13 leaders answered or gave me feedback for. So the question is, how did they engage with the LP, with their self-development? I have here 2 leaders met with their followers. 4 leaders did not meet with their followers, but they stated that they start leading their followers with more conscious of their leadership. And 1 stated that she started looking for leadership conferences to learn more about leadership. So I categorized those leaders into the high usage. This leader, in fact, said, I haven't met yet, but I will. I will later. So that's why I categorized them into the medium. And 5 leaders said, oh, thank you for following. That's almost all. So there is integration between the usage categories and the interviews. The second integration in this study is to discover, do you remember the leader's reaction about the discrepancy when one got angry, and 61 appreciated the discrepancy, and the rest got a little bit confused. I asked myself, okay, so let's see if there is an association between their reaction toward the discrepancy and their usage of what they have learned. Here's what I got. So, one leader was angry, 4 leaders developed some level of confusion, and 8 leaders appreciated. And in fact, when we look at these circles, the purple one, I don't know, it's kind of purple. We have 4 leaders, in fact, within the high usage, and almost 4 leaders within the low and medium usage who did not use. So it's kind of split into half, 50-50%, 50-50 chance. So there is no clear cluster toward one category than another. Also, in terms of leaders who developed kind of confusion reaction, they're split into half. 2 leaders within the high, 2 leaders within the low. So there is no clear association, in fact. And the angry leader, in fact, was within the high. And that's really surprising for me. So, in conclusion, I don't see any association between their initial reaction toward the discrepancy and their usage of what they have learned. The third integration is between the categories and the leader's position. In fact, literature reviews showed that there is a negative association between leaders' position and their self-development. Every time they grow and they go higher in their leadership position, the lower they develop their leadership behaviors. This is what the literature reviews suggested. So let's see. How about my participants?
Yeah.
Is that association there? We have vice president, in fact, within the high usage. That's nice for now. Associate vice president, they split half. They have 2. One within the high, one within the low. So it's like 50-50%. Provost within the low. Associate provost, there are 2. Split into half. Here is 2, here is 2. Like almost 50-50%. So there's no association. There is no clear cluster toward one category than another based on their leadership position. A dean, split into half. Have 2 deans, 1 dean in the low and the second dean within the high, and an associate dean within the high. So, summary, there is no association I can see between the leaders in this study. In summary, leaders in this study benefited from the LPI 360 feedback regardless of their leadership position and their initial reaction. However, in fact, some of the leaders said some of the LPI items or questions did not apply to our job, while others, in fact, said they all applied. I don't have any further information about this. How we facilitate the LPI is a crucial role, in fact, determining the success of its implementation. So I recommend LPI facilitators and L360 feedback facilitators to consider the leader's voice, the leader's preference within their facilitation process. Some recommendations. As I mentioned previously, one of the most important factors that associated with any 360 feedback is leaders' receptiveness to receive a 360. So I recommend other studies to search about what can an institution do to increase leaders' receptiveness to receive a 360 feedback within their organization. Another recommendation, which was driven by a challenge that I faced during this study, in fact. There is a number of observers did not complete the LPI observer. They did not observe their leaders. And other observers, in fact, contacted me and said, drop my name. I don't want to observe my leader. So I asked myself, why did they drop their name? Why who participated? Why who did not participate? So I recommend other researchers to study the observer's needs in order to engage in a 360 feedback later more effectively. This study focused only on the effectiveness of the LPI 360 feedback, while other researchers, in fact, suggested a 360 culture built around it. So I suggest other researchers, or I recommend other researchers to study how we create a 360 culture within an organization or their organization or a higher education organization. Thank you all for listening, and thank you all for the time you spent attending this presentation. Thank you for my committee members, for Dr. Mansberger. I think I drove you crazy a little bit of time. Sorry about that. Thank you, Mary, for the help. She helped me a lot expressing my ideas, in fact. And thank you for my wife, for all of my friends who attend. And that's all.
So now is the time for questions. If people have questions to ask you, they can. And I'm not looking for a real long answer on this one, but my one question is you could have asked the satisfaction with your facilitation by simply having them do a group dissatisfaction or satisfaction, like a Likert scale or categorical thing, which was simpler than the Kano model. Why did you choose to go with the Kano model and not just a simple dissatisfaction scale?
I don't know why exactly, but I thought of this point, asking them about, are you satisfied about this point or not? Rated from 1 to 10. I don't think that gives me more meaning than what I'm going to get from the Kano survey. The Kano survey, in fact, will help me to recognize how they perceive that feature. Do they perceive it as a basic requirement, as an attractive, as an indifference? Then I can see exactly what I embed later in the process, what I just exclude. Also, I can, using the Kano survey, it helps me to measure the satisfaction level that's associated with each one of those. So I think it gives more information than just having a Likert scale from 1 to 10.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Any other?
You talk about the semi-structured interview. I'm assuming that's what you meant when you said semi, which allows you to go in and ask specific questions with room for deviating from that script if you need to. Mm-hmm. Did you find that any of the leaders led you off in another path?
Oh yes, in fact, a lot, a lot. And when I first time wrote my chapter my chapter 4, I got almost 100 pages. Mm-hmm. And then when I came to answer my research questions, I found I don't need all of those. And I found, yes, a lot of information beyond the research questions, but I could not add them because of my research framework. But what I learned beyond this study is the 300s, how the 360 culture could be. when leaders suggested me a 360 culture, I asked them, so how would you envision this 360? How would you like it to be? And the most interesting point was stated by one leader. He said, we want our supervisor to take a risk and evaluate his own leadership behavior so he can encourage us. And some of them also suggested even the president of this university to implement this 360 and show that we all, as a leader, evaluate our own leadership behaviors. We all want to develop. We are not trying to hunt you down by the numbers you get. So this is one of the elements, in fact, they want to be embedded within a 360 feedback culture, that all leaders implement it, whether the president or anyone. Yeah, this one.
So I have another question. And remember how when we first started talking about your study, and you wanted to do a quantitative one, and you bring the inventory in, and we started talking about what you were curious about, and we realized it was a qualitative study was the first question, right? And so you did a qualitative, and then you found a way to do quantitative too. So you did a mixed method. And but tell me, what did you learn about qualitative and quantitative? I mean, did you find that you had a preference for one or the other, or what was the surprise about the difference between the two? Do you have any comments on that?
Oh yeah, yeah. In fact, one of the ideas that I keep repeating to myself, I said, if I start as a qualitative, I have to be flexible, and this is what also Croswell suggested. As a qualitative researcher, you have to be flexible enough to go beyond what you explore, to increase or to go beyond the qualitative if needed. And in fact, when I started this study, I thought it's simple, and whatever I wrote and presented, I just tried to present the simplest thing, in fact. But then when I get to my study, I found qualitative enough is not really going to answer the question in a more robust way, let's say. But I have to embed a quantitative to evaluate my effect in order to at least give some weight to the interpretation. And I think the one point is giving more weight, maybe, by including another approach than just staying with the qualitative part.
Kind of a follow-up to that is qualitative data can be really amorphous, big and massive. You talked about in terms of trustworthiness, using peer debriefing, triangulation. Were there other features that you brought in to kind of make the research a little bit more credible?
I think I add a lot of things. One of them, yes, I bother Dr. Mansberger going to her every time and show her what I found.
She's a peer debriefer? You debrief with Dr.
Oh, yeah. He debriefs with me all the time.
And even, in fact, her
receptionist?
Your receptionist and your staff, in fact, they said, we need to charge you more, in fact, for all of these visits. So this is one of the triangulation I think I embedded. Also, I invited 14 leaders. That's, in fact, gives more precise to the information I get, because like a lot of people are going to repeat things like similarly. That gives more weight, and I think it's kind of triangulation also. In addition, I analyze this data using a software, not my hand, so I can go beyond just reading what I see, but the software can show me the association between how this group of leaders perceive that point compared to the other point. And in fact, this is one of the, I think, trustworthiness that's not exist in the qualitative books, which is how you analyze your data is really add credibility to your finding. Using hands, you'll get tired, really. You'll provide the simplest things that you can finish. And yeah, in fact, one of the pieces is qualitative, is the in vivo software. And my ability, in fact, to use in vivo. I was recognized as an in vivo expert by the company. So, and this is one of the trustworthy, I think. Any other questions?
I thought the feedback you got on not doing the open-ended responses was interesting. But it seems to me that's a double-edged sword. Because, from my perspective, the quantitative gives you consistency, it allows you to test for, validity and reliability, and you can start to say, this response equals this response. Conversely, the open-ended responses can be all over the place. And the other part to me is, given the volume of respondents, wouldn't there be issues of confidentiality there? I mean, it seems to me that if we've worked with somebody for 10 years, we can hear them in our head, all the time. And, the provost did one on me once. Well, he was one of the respondents, and I could pick out his statements because it was stuff he had said, for years. And so doesn't confidentiality go both ways in a study? Because, you talked a lot about the confidentiality of the participants, but it also seems to me there's confidentiality with regards to the respondents. And if there's only 4 people evaluating you, to give a really low score, that could really,
Their voice would be a
Their voice would be
giveaway,
heard, yeah.
who they were.
That's really good question, and I will link this question with Dr. Hadley's question when you said, what did you learn within the SIM interview? Yes, I asked the leaders, in fact, when they suggested me open-ended questions, I asked them, so what questions do you suggest? Can you state a question that we can put in the survey later? And they said, we don't have any questions, like specific question, but we need questions that explore their intention toward us. This is one of the things, in fact. And other leaders, in fact, said, no, I want an open-ended question to see what they want me to do more. And they asked them this question. So, do you think you can discover their identity by reading their writing style? In fact, some of them said, I can tell you who answered this based on the numbers. So absolutely, I can discover their identity by the quality. And